Nurse Rebecca Martinez entered the Platinum VIP suite at Riverside Medical Center, knowing she was about to face her most challenging patient yet. Tech mogul Alexander Blackwood had been admitted for routine surgery, but had already driven away 4 nurses with his impossible demands and inappropriate behavior. "Finally, someone who looks competent," Alexander sneered from his luxury hospital bed, eyeing Rebecca with obvious calculation. "I hope you understand that I expect a certain level of personal attention from my medical staff." Rebecca maintained her professional composure despite the clear innuendo in his voice. "I'm here to provide excellent nursing care, Mr. Blackwood. That's what you can expect from me." What neither of them knew was that the hospital's new security system was recording everything in ultra-high definition, and Alexander's behavior was about to be broadcast to the entire hospital administration, his company's board of directors, and eventually the world. If this story resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. The VIP suite at Riverside Medical Center represented the pinnacle of luxury healthcare, designed specifically for ultra-wealthy patients who demanded privacy, comfort, and complete control over their medical experience. The 3,000-square-foot space featured Italian marble floors, crystal chandeliers, panoramic city views, a full kitchen staffed by gourmet chefs, private conference rooms, and amenities that surpassed most 5-star hotels. Alexander Blackwood had reserved the entire 45th floor for his stay, transforming the medical facility into his personal kingdom, where he expected staff to cater to his every whim, regardless of how inappropriate or unreasonable his demands might be. At 38 years old, he controlled a tech empire worth $20 billion and had grown accustomed to using his wealth and influence to manipulate people into compliance with his desires. The suite's luxury amenities included a private elevator, soundproof walls, and security systems that Alexander assumed would protect his privacy while he conducted what he considered stress tests of hospital personnel, particularly attractive female staff members who caught his attention during his medical stay. Alexander's admission to Riverside Medical Center was for elective surgery to repair a sports injury sustained during an extreme skiing vacation in the Swiss Alps. The procedure was routine and minimally invasive, but Alexander had chosen to extend his hospital stay for 2 weeks, ostensibly for recovery, but actually to enjoy the luxury accommodations while pursuing what he considered entertainment at the expense of hospital staff. His reputation for inappropriate behavior with service workers was well established among the ultra-wealthy social circles, where such conduct was often overlooked or excused as eccentric behavior from successful men who were accustomed to getting whatever they wanted. Hotels, restaurants, and other luxury service providers had learned to accommodate his demands while protecting their staff through careful scheduling and supervision. But hospitals operated under different professional standards and legal obligations that Alexander either didn't understand or chose to ignore. Medical facilities were governed by strict ethical codes, patient safety regulations, and professional boundaries that couldn't be waived regardless of a patient's wealth or social status. The nursing staff assigned to Alexander's care had been carefully selected by the hospital administration, which was aware of his reputation but needed the revenue that his extended stay would generate. The first nurse, Jennifer Walsh, had resigned after 2 days of increasingly inappropriate comments and demands that she perform non-medical personal services. The second nurse, Maria Santos, had requested reassignment after Alexander made explicit sexual propositions and threatened to have her fired if she didn't comply with his advances. Her formal complaint had been filed with the hospital's Human Resources Department, but had been quietly suppressed to avoid conflict with such a high-revenue patient. The third and fourth nurses had similarly brief tenures, each leaving after experiencing behavior that would have been considered sexual harassment in any other workplace, but was being tolerated by hospital administration due to Alexander's financial importance to the institution. Rebecca Martinez represented the hospital's last hope for managing Alexander's care without losing additional nursing staff or facing legal liability for creating hostile working conditions. With 12 years of experience in intensive care nursing, Rebecca had dealt with difficult patients throughout her career and was known for her ability to maintain professional boundaries while providing excellent medical care. At 32 years old, Rebecca was a single mother who had worked her way through nursing school while raising her daughter Emma, now 8 years old. Her nursing salary was the sole source of income for her family, making her job security critically important for maintaining their modest but stable lifestyle in a small apartment near the hospital. Rebecca's nursing expertise was exceptional, with specialized training in post-surgical care, pain management, and patient education that made her one of the most skilled nurses on Riverside Medical Center's staff. Her professional reputation was built on clinical excellence, compassionate patient care, and unwavering ethical standards that had earned respect from physicians, colleagues, and previous patients. But Rebecca had never encountered a patient like Alexander Blackwood, whose combination of wealth, arrogance, and predatory behavior created challenges that went far beyond normal nursing responsibilities. Her briefing from the nursing supervisor had warned her about his demanding personality, but had not adequately prepared her for the systematic boundary testing that Alexander had perfected through years of manipulating service workers. What neither Rebecca nor Alexander knew was that Riverside Medical Center had recently installed a comprehensive security system throughout the hospital, including high-definition cameras and audio recording equipment in all patient rooms and common areas. The system had been implemented following several incidents of patient abuse allegations and regulatory requirements for enhanced monitoring of patient care quality. The VIP Suite's security system was particularly sophisticated, featuring multiple camera angles, crystal-clear audio recording, and automatic cloud storage that preserved all footage for legal compliance and quality assurance purposes. The recordings were monitored in real time by security staff and could be accessed by hospital administration, legal counsel, and law enforcement when necessary. Dr. Patricia Chen, the hospital's chief medical officer, had personally authorized the enhanced security monitoring for Alexander's room after receiving reports about his behavior with nursing staff. While she couldn't refuse his medical care, she was determined to protect her staff and document any inappropriate conduct that might require intervention or legal action. The security monitoring room was staffed 24 hours a day by trained personnel who were responsible for patient safety, staff protection, and incident documentation. The head of security, former police detective Marcus Williams, had been specifically instructed to monitor Alexander's interactions with nursing staff and report any concerning behavior to hospital administration immediately. Unknown to Alexander, his every word and action in the VIP suite was being recorded in ultra-high definition and monitored by security personnel who were trained to recognize signs of harassment, abuse, or other inappropriate behavior that could create liability for the hospital or harm to staff members. When Rebecca entered the VIP suite for her first shift caring for Alexander, she was immediately struck by the opulent surroundings that seemed designed more for entertainment than medical care. The luxury amenities created an atmosphere that felt more like a high-end hotel than a healthcare facility, contributing to Alexander's apparent belief that normal professional boundaries didn't apply to his interactions with staff. Alexander was reclining in his custom hospital bed, which had been modified with Egyptian cotton sheets, silk pillows, and electronic controls that managed everything from lighting to entertainment systems. He was wearing expensive pajamas rather than standard hospital gowns, and had transformed his bedside table into a command center equipped with multiple phones, tablets, and communication devices. Finally, someone who looks competent, Alexander said with obvious calculation as he assessed Rebecca's appearance, his eyes moving over her body in a way that made his intentions clear from their first interaction. I hope you understand that I expect a certain level of personal attention from my medical staff. Luigi, the comment was deliberately ambiguous, but clearly inappropriate, designed to test Rebecca's response and establish his expectation that she would be available for services that went beyond professional nursing care. His tone carried the confidence of someone who had successfully manipulated service workers in the past and expected similar compliance from hospital staff. Rebecca recognized the inappropriate nature of his comment, but responded with professional composure that reflected her training and experience in managing difficult patient interactions. "I'm here to provide excellent nursing care, Mr. Blackwood. That's what you can expect from me." Her response was firm but polite, establishing professional boundaries while avoiding confrontation that might escalate the situation. Rebecca had learned through experience that clear, consistent boundary setting was often the most effective way to manage patients who might be testing professional limits. But Alexander interpreted her professional response as a challenge rather than a boundary, viewing her refusal to engage with his inappropriate suggestion as resistance that could be overcome through persistence, manipulation, or intimidation tactics that had worked for him in other contexts. "I think you'll find that I'm not like other patients you've worked with," Alexander continued with obvious menace in his voice. "I have certain expectations for the level of service I receive, and I'm very generous with staff members who exceed those expectations. I'm also very demanding with those who don't meet my standards." The implicit threat was clear. Alexander was suggesting that Rebecca's job security and professional future might depend on her willingness to accommodate his demands, regardless of their appropriateness or legality. His confident delivery indicated that he had used similar tactics successfully in the past. Rebecca understood the threatening undertone in Alexander's comment, but remained committed to maintaining professional standards regardless of pressure or intimidation. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm confident that you'll be satisfied with the professional nursing care I provide. Let me check your vital signs and review your post-surgical recovery plan." Her response redirected the conversation toward legitimate medical care while demonstrating that she wouldn't be intimidated by his threats or manipulation. Rebecca's professional training had taught her to focus on patient care responsibilities rather than engaging with inappropriate behavior or demands. But as Rebecca approached Alexander's bed, with blood pressure equipment and medical supplies, he made his intentions even more explicit, reaching out to touch her arm in a way that was clearly inappropriate for a patient-nurse interaction. "You know, Rebecca, I can call you Rebecca, can't I? I think we're going to get along very well," Alexander said while maintaining unwelcome physical contact. "I like nurses who understand that patient satisfaction involves more than just medical care." The physical contact and explicit suggestion crossed a clear line from inappropriate comments to actual harassment that would be unacceptable in any professional environment. Rebecca immediately stepped back to break the unwelcome contact while maintaining her professional demeanor. "Mr. Blackwood, I need you to keep your hands to yourself during medical care," Rebecca said firmly, her voice carrying authority that reflected her professional expertise and personal boundaries. "Physical contact should be limited to what's necessary for medical assessment and treatment." Alexander's response revealed his true character and the predatory pattern that had apparently worked for him in other situations with service workers who couldn't afford to resist his advances or report his behavior. "Oh, come on, Rebecca. Don't be so uptight," Alexander said with a laugh that suggested he viewed her professional boundaries as amusing obstacles rather than legitimate limits. I'm sure we can work out an arrangement that makes this stay pleasant for both of us. I'm very generous with people who help me relax during my recovery." The explicit proposition was accompanied by a gesture toward the nightstand where Alexander kept cash and expensive gifts that he apparently used as tools for manipulating service workers into compliance with his inappropriate demands. Rebecca realized that Alexander's behavior represented a pattern of sexual harassment that would likely escalate if not addressed firmly and immediately. Her response needed to establish clear boundaries while documenting his inappropriate conduct for potential legal or administrative action. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm here to provide professional nursing care, period," Rebecca stated with clarity that left no room for misinterpretation. "Any suggestions about other services or arrangements are completely inappropriate and will not be entertained. I need you to respect professional boundaries during your medical care." But Alexander's reaction to Rebecca's clear boundary setting revealed the entitled arrogance that had apparently allowed him to manipulate service workers throughout his adult life. Instead of accepting her professional limits, he became more aggressive and explicit in his demands. "Listen carefully, Rebecca," Alexander said, with a tone that shifted from playful to threatening. "I pay more for this room than you make in a year. That means I get the level of service I want, when I want it, from whoever I want it from. You can either be cooperative or I can make your life very difficult. Your choice." The threat was explicit and designed to force Rebecca into compliance through economic intimidation and implied retaliation against her career and financial security. Alexander's confident delivery suggested that he had used similar tactics successfully with other service workers who couldn't afford to resist his demands. But what Alexander didn't know was that every word of his harassment and threats was being recorded in high-definition video and crystal-clear audio by the hospital's security system, creating documented evidence of behavior that would soon expose him to consequences he had never faced before. Marcus Williams, monitoring the VIP suite from the security center, immediately recognized that Alexander's behavior constituted clear sexual harassment and potential criminal conduct that required immediate intervention and documentation. Over the next several hours, Alexander's behavior became increasingly aggressive and explicitly inappropriate as he tested Rebecca's professional boundaries and attempted to coerce her into compliance with his sexual demands. Each interaction was carefully recorded by the hospital's security system, creating a comprehensive record of harassment that would soon have consequences far beyond Alexander's expectations. Rebecca maintained her professional composure and clinical focus despite Alexander's escalating harassment, documenting each incident while providing the medical care that his post-surgical recovery required. Her nursing expertise remained exemplary, even as she dealt with behavior that would have been intolerable in any other professional environment. "You know, Rebecca, I've been thinking about our conversation earlier," Alexander said, during what should have been a routine medication administration, his voice carrying obvious sexual suggestion. "I have a proposal that could benefit both of us significantly. I'm planning a trip to my private island next month, and I could use a personal nurse for the vacation. The compensation would be substantial." The proposition was clearly intended as payment for sexual services disguised as nursing employment, representing a pattern of behavior that Alexander had apparently used with other service workers who needed income but couldn't afford to report his harassment. Rebecca recognized the inappropriate nature of his offer, but responded with professional firmness that protected her boundaries while avoiding escalation. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm not available for private employment arrangements. My job is to provide professional nursing care during your hospital stay." But Alexander interpreted her refusal as negotiation rather than rejection, increasing his pressure and making his expectations even more explicit. "I think you misunderstood my offer, Rebecca. This wouldn't be traditional nursing work. I'm talking about personal companionship during a luxury vacation. The compensation would be $50,000 for 1 week. The explicit sexual proposition was accompanied by detailed descriptions of his private island facilities, luxury accommodations, and expectations for personal services that clearly had nothing to do with legitimate nursing care. Alexander's confident presentation suggested that he believed every person had a price, and that sufficient money could purchase compliance with any demand. Rebecca's response demonstrated the professional integrity that had characterized her nursing career and her commitment to ethical standards that couldn't be compromised regardless of financial incentives or pressure. "Mr. Blackwood, your offer is completely inappropriate, and I'm not interested in any arrangement beyond professional nursing care," Rebecca stated clearly. "I need you to stop making these suggestions and focus on your medical recovery." Alexander's reaction to Rebecca's continued rejection revealed his inability to accept that his wealth and influence might not be sufficient to manipulate every person he encountered. Instead of respecting her boundaries, he became more aggressive and threatening in his approach. "You're making a mistake, Rebecca," Alexander said with obvious menace. "I have connections throughout this hospital system and the broader medical community. Nurses who don't cooperate with me tend to find their careers limited. Are you sure you want to risk your professional future over false modesty?" The threat was designed to force compliance through fear of career destruction, demonstrating Alexander's willingness to use his wealth and influence as weapons against service workers who resisted his inappropriate advances. His confident delivery suggested that he had successfully used similar intimidation tactics in the past. But Rebecca had encountered workplace bullying before and understood that giving in to threats would only encourage more aggressive behavior. Her response reflected both personal courage and professional training in dealing with difficult patients. "Mr. Blackwood, threats and intimidation are completely unacceptable," Rebecca replied with authority that reflected her professional expertise and personal integrity. "If you continue this behavior, I'll need to involve hospital security and administration." Alexander's response revealed his fundamental arrogance and complete disregard for professional boundaries or legal consequences that might result from his behavior. "Go ahead and report me," Alexander laughed dismissively. "Do you think hospital administration is going to choose a replaceable nurse over a patient who generates millions in revenue? You're delusional if you think your complaints will be taken seriously against someone with my influence." His confident dismissal of potential consequences reflected his experience with service industries where complaints about wealthy customers were often ignored or suppressed to protect revenue relationships. Alexander genuinely believed that his financial importance would protect him from accountability for his harassment and threats. But Alexander's arrogance had blinded him to the changing legal and social environment that was increasingly holding powerful men accountable for sexual harassment and abuse of power relationships. Hospital administration was also more concerned about legal liability and regulatory compliance than protecting revenue from inappropriate patients. Dr. Patricia Chen had been monitoring reports about Alexander's behavior and was preparing intervention strategies that would protect hospital staff while managing potential legal and financial consequences. The documented evidence from security recordings would provide clear support for any disciplinary action or legal proceedings that might become necessary. Marcus Williams continued documenting Alexander's escalating harassment through the security monitoring system, creating a comprehensive record that would be available to hospital administration, legal counsel, and law enforcement agencies if criminal charges became appropriate. As Rebecca continued her nursing duties despite Alexander's harassment, she began to notice other concerning aspects of his behavior that suggested patterns of abuse extending beyond sexual propositions. His interactions with housekeeping staff, food service workers, and other hospital personnel revealed systematic manipulation and intimidation tactics. During a routine room cleaning, Rebecca observed Alexander demanding that the housekeeping attendant, Maria Gonzalez, clean his bathroom floor on her hands and knees while he watched and made degrading comments about her appearance and immigration status. "That's not clean enough," Alexander told Maria while she scrubbed bathroom tiles that were already spotless. "Maybe if you put more effort into your work, you wouldn't need to clean toilets for a living. Do it again, and this time make sure I can see you're really working for your paycheck." The humiliating treatment of Maria revealed Alexander's pattern of using his wealth and perceived social superiority to degrade service workers who couldn't afford to resist his abusive behavior. His comments about immigration status suggested that he specifically targeted vulnerable workers who might fear reporting his conduct. Rebecca documented this incident along with Alexander's harassment of her, recognizing that his behavior represented systematic abuse of power that affected multiple hospital employees who deserved protection from his inappropriate conduct. When food service staff delivered Alexander's gourmet meals, Rebecca observed similar patterns of degrading treatment disguised as customer preferences or quality standards. He regularly rejected meals that met hospital standards, demanding that staff return multiple times while making inappropriate comments about their appearance or competence. "This meal is completely unacceptable," Alexander would announce loudly enough for other staff to hear. "I expect better service from people who work for tips. Maybe if you put more effort into presentation, you'd earn better compensation." The systematic humiliation of service workers revealed Alexander's fundamental lack of respect for anyone he perceived as beneath his social or economic status. His behavior patterns suggested years of practice in manipulating and degrading people who couldn't afford to challenge his conduct. Rebecca began to understand that her experience with Alexander was part of a broader pattern of abuse that affected numerous hospital employees who lacked the professional protection or financial security necessary to report his inappropriate behavior or seek other employment options. The comprehensive documentation provided by the security system was creating evidence of systematic workplace harassment that would soon expose Alexander to legal and professional consequences that his wealth and influence couldn't prevent or control. As Alexander's behavior became more aggressive and explicitly inappropriate, Rebecca maintained her professional standards while documenting each incident and seeking support from hospital administration for managing what had become an untenable working situation. Her nursing care remained exemplary despite the harassment, demonstrating the professional commitment and ethical integrity that characterized excellent healthcare providers who prioritized patient welfare even when dealing with abusive or inappropriate conduct. On Rebecca's third day caring for Alexander, his behavior reached a critical point that would trigger immediate intervention from hospital security and administration. The morning had begun with escalating harassment that became increasingly explicit and threatening as Alexander grew frustrated with Rebecca's continued resistance to his demands. "I've been very patient with you, Rebecca," Alexander announced while she was checking his surgical incision and monitoring his recovery progress. "But my patience is running out. I think it's time for you to show some appreciation for the generous opportunity I've offered you." As Rebecca leaned over to examine his surgical site, Alexander suddenly grabbed her arm and pulled her closer while making explicit sexual demands that left no ambiguity about his intentions or expectations. "I want you to understand something very clearly," Alexander said, while maintaining unwelcome physical contact, despite Rebecca's attempts to free herself. "I always get what I want from people who work for me. You can make this easy on yourself, or you can make it very difficult. Either way, you're going to give me what I'm paying for." The physical restraint and explicit sexual demands constituted clear assault and harassment that crossed legal boundaries regardless of Alexander's wealth or the hospital's revenue concerns. Rebecca immediately activated the emergency call button that would summon security personnel while documenting the incident for legal and administrative action. "Let go of me immediately, Mr. Blackwood," Rebecca demanded with authority that reflected both professional training and personal courage in confronting dangerous behavior. "Your conduct is completely unacceptable and will be reported to hospital administration and security." But Alexander's response revealed the depth of his entitlement and complete disregard for legal or professional consequences that might result from his criminal behavior. "You're not going anywhere until we reach an understanding," Alexander said, while tightening his grip on Rebecca's arm and using his body weight to prevent her from moving away from his bed. "I've invested too much time in training you to let you walk away without providing proper service." The escalation to physical restraint and explicit threats represented criminal conduct that would be prosecuted regardless of Alexander's wealth or social status. Rebecca's emergency call had already triggered response from hospital security personnel who were monitoring the situation through real-time video surveillance. Marcus Williams immediately dispatched security officers to the VIP suite while notifying Dr. Chen and hospital legal counsel about the assault in progress. The high-definition video recording provided clear evidence of criminal behavior that would support prosecution and civil liability actions. Within 2 minutes of Rebecca's emergency call, 3 security officers entered the VIP suite with authority to intervene in the assault and protect hospital staff from further harm. Their arrival created a dramatic shift in power dynamics that Alexander had not anticipated. "Sir, release the nurse immediately and step away from her," commanded Officer Sarah Davis, the lead security responder who had years of experience managing violent and abusive patients in hospital settings. Alexander's initial response revealed his shock at facing consequences for behavior that had previously been tolerated or ignored by service industries that prioritized his revenue over staff protection. "This is a private medical room, and you have no authority to interfere with my interactions with hospital staff," Alexander declared with arrogance that ignored the reality of his criminal behavior and the security officer's legal authority to protect employees. Officer Davis had dealt with entitled patients before and understood that Alexander's wealth wouldn't protect him from prosecution for assault and harassment of hospital employees. "Sir, you are under arrest for assault and harassment of hospital staff," Officer Davis announced while approaching Alexander with restraints that would prevent further violence or intimidation. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court." The arrest created immediate chaos as Alexander realized that his wealth and influence hadn't protected him from legal consequences for his criminal behavior. His attorneys were contacted immediately, but the video evidence and witness testimony would make defense extremely difficult. Rebecca was evaluated by hospital medical staff and provided with counseling support while preparing formal statements about Alexander's harassment and assault. The comprehensive documentation from security recordings provided clear evidence that would support criminal prosecution and civil liability claims. Dr. Patricia Chen convened an emergency meeting with hospital administration, legal counsel, and security personnel to address the incident and implement measures that would protect staff while managing media attention and regulatory reporting requirements. "This patient's behavior was completely unacceptable and criminal," Dr. Chen announced during the emergency meeting. "We have clear evidence of systematic harassment and assault that requires immediate action to protect our staff and maintain our professional standards." The hospital's response included immediate termination of Alexander's medical privileges, cooperation with criminal prosecution, support for affected employees, and implementation of enhanced security measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. Alexander's arrest was processed through normal criminal justice procedures, despite his attorney's attempts to negotiate special treatment or financial settlements that would avoid prosecution. The video evidence and witness testimony provided prosecutors with clear cases for assault, harassment, and potential additional charges. The security recordings that had captured Alexander's behavior were preserved as evidence and would soon be released to media outlets as part of public records requests, exposing his conduct to public scrutiny and professional consequences that extended far beyond criminal penalties. Within hours of Alexander's arrest, news of the incident began spreading throughout social media as hospital staff shared information about his abusive behavior and the security footage that had documented his criminal conduct. The hashtag #NewBlackwoodExposed began trending as people expressed outrage about his treatment of healthcare workers. The high-definition security recordings were released as part of public records requests, providing crystal-clear documentation of Alexander's harassment, threats, and assault that contradicted any potential defense claims about misunderstanding or consent. The footage showed every detail of Alexander's predatory behavior, from his initial inappropriate comments to his escalating harassment and final assault of Rebecca. His attempts to bribe, threaten, and physically coerce hospital staff were captured with audio and video quality that left no ambiguity about his conduct or intentions. Technology news websites picked up the story first, recognizing that Alexander's behavior reflected broader issues within the tech industry about powerful men abusing their positions to exploit service workers and employees who couldn't afford to resist or report inappropriate conduct. Tech mogul arrested for assaulting nurse. Security footage exposes pattern of abuse became headline news across major media platforms, with the security recordings providing undeniable evidence that contradicted Alexander's initial claims of misunderstanding or false accusations. The video evidence showed Alexander's systematic manipulation tactics, from offering bribes to making threats to using physical restraint, demonstrating a calculated pattern of predatory behavior rather than isolated incidents or misunderstandings. Business media coverage focused on the implications for Alexander's technology companies, which faced potential investor boycotts, customer departures, and regulatory scrutiny related to their CEO's criminal behavior and apparent pattern of abusing power relationships. Stock prices for Alexander's companies dropped dramatically as investors recognized the reputational damage and potential legal liabilities associated with his personal conduct and the impact on corporate governance and public trust. Board members at Alexander's various companies convened emergency meetings to address the crisis and consider leadership changes that would protect shareholder interests and corporate reputation from further damage related to his criminal behavior. The tech industry's response included statements from other CEOs and industry leaders condemning Alexander's behavior while expressing support for healthcare workers and service industry employees who face similar harassment from wealthy and powerful customers. Professional nursing organizations used Alexander's case to highlight broader issues of workplace harassment in healthcare settings, advocating for stronger protections and zero-tolerance policies that would prevent similar incidents from occurring in other medical facilities. Rebecca's courage in resisting Alexander's demands and reporting his criminal behavior was recognized by nursing organizations and patient advocacy groups who praised her professionalism and integrity under extremely difficult circumstances. The National Organization for Women and other advocacy groups used Alexander's case to promote legislation and policy changes that would strengthen protections for service workers who faced harassment from wealthy customers in industries where revenue concerns sometimes overrode employee safety. Legal experts analyzed the security footage and criminal charges, noting that the high-definition documentation provided unprecedented evidence of systematic workplace harassment and assault that would likely result in significant criminal penalties and civil liability. Alexander's criminal defense team faced the challenge of defending against charges supported by clear video evidence that showed his predatory behavior and explicit criminal conduct. Plea bargaining became their most viable strategy for minimizing penalties. Civil attorneys representing Rebecca and other hospital employees prepared lawsuits against both Alexander personally and his corporate entities, seeking damages for harassment, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violations of employment protection laws. The criminal prosecution of Alexander Blackwood proceeded rapidly due to the overwhelming evidence provided by hospital security recordings. His attorneys negotiated plea agreements that included significant prison time, financial penalties, and mandatory counseling for sexual harassment and anger management. Alexander's plea agreement included admission of guilt for assault, harassment, and related charges, along with agreement to pay substantial restitution to affected hospital employees and fund healthcare worker protection programs at medical facilities throughout the region. The criminal penalties included 18 months in prison, 5 years of probation with strict supervision, and completion of counseling programs designed to address his abusive behavior patterns and entitlement attitudes that had enabled his criminal conduct. Civil litigation resulted in multi-million-dollar settlements for Rebecca and other affected hospital employees, providing financial compensation for the harassment and assault they had experienced while establishing legal precedents for protecting healthcare workers from abusive patients. The civil settlements included funding for enhanced security measures at hospitals, training programs for staff dealing with difficult patients, and legal support for healthcare workers who faced harassment or assault in their professional duties. Alexander's technology companies implemented new leadership structures and governance policies designed to prevent similar incidents and restore investor confidence that had been damaged by his personal conduct and its reflection on corporate culture and management practices. Board members at Alexander's companies voted to remove him from all leadership positions and implemented policies that would prevent his return to decision-making roles that could affect employee welfare or corporate reputation. The companies also established employee protection programs, enhanced reporting procedures for harassment and abuse, and partnerships with organizations that supported workplace safety and professional conduct standards. Riverside Medical Center used the incident to implement comprehensive reforms in patient management, security procedures, and staff protection protocols that would prevent similar situations while maintaining high-quality medical care for all patients, regardless of their wealth or social status. The hospital's new policies included enhanced security monitoring, mandatory respect training for all patients and visitors, and zero-tolerance enforcement of professional boundary violations that would result in immediate termination of medical privileges. Staff protection measures included rapid response procedures for harassment incidents, legal support for affected employees, and counseling services that address the emotional impact of workplace abuse and professional boundary violations. Dr. Patricia Chen became a national spokesperson for healthcare worker protection, using Alexander's case to advocate for industry-wide policies that would strengthen protections and create accountability for patients who abuse their wealth or influence to exploit medical professionals. Rebecca returned to nursing practice with enhanced support from hospital administration and became an advocate for healthcare worker rights, speaking at conferences and training programs about professional boundary maintenance and resistance to workplace harassment. Her courage in confronting Alexander's abuse and maintaining professional standards despite threats and intimidation became a model for other healthcare workers facing similar challenges in their professional practice. The Rebecca Martinez Healthcare Worker Protection Fund was established with proceeds from civil litigation and voluntary contributions, providing legal support, counseling services, and financial assistance for healthcare workers who experienced workplace harassment or abuse. The long-term consequences of Alexander's exposure and prosecution extended far beyond individual accountability to include systemic changes in how wealthy patients were managed in healthcare settings and how service industries protected employees from abusive customers. Hospitals throughout the country implemented new policies for managing VIP patients, including enhanced security monitoring, mandatory respect training, and zero-tolerance enforcement of professional boundary violations that prioritize staff safety over revenue considerations. The healthcare industry's response included development of standardized protocols for identifying and managing patients who displayed predatory or abusive behavior patterns, providing staff with tools and training necessary to maintain professional boundaries while ensuring patient safety. Professional medical associations updated ethical guidelines and training requirements to address power dynamic abuse and patient behavior that created hostile working conditions for healthcare providers. The tech industry faced increased scrutiny about workplace culture and leadership accountability following Alexander's case, leading to enhanced corporate governance policies and stronger protections for employees who reported harassment or abuse by executives and managers. Investor groups began incorporating conduct standards and ethical leadership criteria into their evaluation processes for technology companies, recognizing that executive behavior reflected corporate culture and management quality that affected long-term business success and risk management. The legal precedents established by Alexander's prosecution and civil litigation strengthened protections for service workers in healthcare, hospitality, and other industries, where wealthy customers had previously exploited power imbalances to engage in harassment or abuse. Employment law reforms included enhanced penalties for harassment in service industries, stronger protections for workers who reported abuse, and legal frameworks that held both individuals and corporations accountable for creating or tolerating hostile working conditions. The security technology industry expanded development of monitoring and documentation systems that protected both employees and customers by creating clear records of interactions and behavior patterns that could be used for training, quality assurance, and legal protection. Rebecca's advocacy work influenced nursing education curricula that included enhanced training in professional boundary maintenance, recognition of harassment patterns, and strategies for protecting personal safety while providing excellent patient care. Her speaking engagements at medical conferences and training programs inspired other healthcare workers to maintain professional standards and report inappropriate behavior, creating cultural changes that strengthened workplace protections throughout the healthcare industry. The annual Rebecca Martinez Award for Professional Courage was established by nursing organizations to recognize healthcare workers who demonstrated exceptional integrity and courage in maintaining professional standards despite pressure, threats, or other challenges. Alexander's case became a mandatory case study in business schools and medical training programs, illustrating the consequences of power abuse and the importance of ethical leadership and professional conduct in all industries and professional relationships. 5 years after Alexander's prosecution and the implementation of enhanced protection measures for healthcare workers, the impact of Rebecca's courage had created lasting changes throughout the medical industry and broader service sectors. Hospital security systems had evolved to include comprehensive monitoring and documentation capabilities that protected both staff and patients, while ensuring accountability for behavior that violated professional standards or legal requirements. Training programs for healthcare workers included enhanced education about professional boundary maintenance, recognition of harassment patterns, and legal protections available for employees who faced inappropriate behavior from patients, visitors, or colleagues. The nursing profession had strengthened its advocacy for workplace safety and professional respect, with organizations like the American Nurses Association implementing comprehensive support programs for members who experienced harassment or abuse in their professional duties. Medical malpractice insurance companies began offering coverage and support for healthcare providers who faced harassment or assault, recognizing that workplace safety was essential for maintaining quality patient care and professional satisfaction. Technology companies had implemented enhanced corporate governance policies and conduct standards that held executives and employees accountable for behavior that reflected corporate values and ethical leadership principles. The broader Me Too movement had incorporated lessons from Alexander's case about the importance of documentation, legal support, and systematic accountability for powerful individuals who abuse their positions to exploit service workers and employees. Employment law had evolved to strengthen protections for service industry workers who faced harassment or abuse from customers, creating legal frameworks that balanced business interests with employee safety and professional dignity. Rebecca's daughter Emma, now 13 years old, had been inspired by her mother's courage and advocacy to pursue her own interests in social justice and legal advocacy, planning to study law with the goal of protecting workers' rights and professional dignity. The Martinez family had used proceeds from civil litigation to establish college funds for Emma and other children of healthcare workers, ensuring that the next generation would have educational opportunities that supported their professional and personal goals. Rebecca continued her nursing practice while serving as a national advocate for healthcare worker protection, testifying before congressional committees and participating in policy development that strengthened workplace safety and professional standards. Her memoir, Standing Ground, A Nurse's Story of Courage and Professional Integrity, became a bestseller that inspired healthcare workers while educating the public about challenges faced by medical professionals who served vulnerable populations. Alexander's technology companies had recovered from the initial reputational damage by implementing genuine reforms in corporate culture, leadership accountability, and employee protection, demonstrating that businesses could strengthen their operations by prioritizing ethical conduct and professional respect. The companies had become models for technology industry corporate responsibility, supporting organizations that promoted workplace safety, professional dignity, and protection for service industry workers who faced similar challenges. Alexander himself had completed his criminal sentence and mandatory counseling programs, emerging with genuine understanding of the harm his behavior had caused and commitment to supporting organizations that protected service workers from harassment and abuse. His post-prison advocacy work included funding for healthcare worker protection programs and speaking engagements where he acknowledged his criminal behavior while supporting policy changes that would prevent similar incidents. The transformation of Alexander's understanding and behavior, while not excusing his original conduct, demonstrated that accountability and consequences could lead to genuine change and positive contribution to addressing problems that his previous behavior had exemplified. 10 years after the incident that had exposed Alexander's predatory behavior and led to comprehensive reforms in healthcare worker protection, the legacy of Rebecca's courage continued to influence medical practice, employment law, and corporate accountability throughout American society. The Rebecca Martinez Healthcare Worker Protection Act had been enacted in multiple states, creating legal frameworks that strengthened protections for medical professionals while holding patients accountable for behavior that violated professional boundaries or created hostile working conditions. Medical facilities throughout the country had implemented comprehensive security and monitoring systems that protected staff while maintaining patient privacy and dignity, creating environments where excellent medical care could be provided without exposing healthcare workers to harassment or abuse. Nursing education programs included mandatory training in professional boundary maintenance, harassment recognition, and legal protections that prepared healthcare workers to maintain their integrity and safety while providing compassionate patient care. The technology industry had embraced enhanced corporate governance standards that held executives and employees accountable for behavior that reflected company values and ethical leadership, creating workplaces where professional respect and dignity were prioritized alongside business success. Employment law had evolved to provide stronger protections for service industry workers, recognizing that economic power imbalances could create vulnerabilities that required legal safeguards and accountability mechanisms. The broader cultural impact included increased awareness about power dynamics in service relationships and the importance of treating all workers with dignity and respect regardless of their economic status or professional position. Rebecca's advocacy work had influenced international policy development, with healthcare worker protection programs being implemented in multiple countries that recognize the importance of professional safety and dignity in medical practice. Her daughter Emma had completed law school and begun practicing employment law, specializing in cases that protected healthcare workers and other service industry employees from harassment and abuse by wealthy or powerful customers. The Martinez family's commitment to social justice and worker protection had inspired a new generation of advocates who continued the work of strengthening protections and accountability in professional relationships where power imbalances could be exploited. Alexander's continued advocacy work and financial support for worker protection programs had demonstrated the possibility for genuine transformation and positive contribution following accountability for harmful behavior. His technology companies had maintained their commitment to ethical leadership and employee protection while achieving continued business success, proving that corporate responsibility and profitability could be achieved simultaneously. The comprehensive documentation and evidence provided by security recordings had influenced the development of monitoring and protection technologies that supported both employee safety and customer service quality in healthcare and other service industries. The legal precedents established through Alexander's prosecution and civil litigation continued to strengthen protections for service workers while providing clear accountability for individuals who abused their wealth or influence to exploit professional relationships. Epilogue: the continuing impact. The story of Rebecca Martinez and Alexander Blackwood became more than just an individual case of harassment and accountability. It evolved into a powerful example of how individual courage could create systemic changes that protected vulnerable workers, while holding powerful individuals accountable for their behavior. Rebecca's refusal to accept inappropriate treatment and her commitment to professional boundaries had inspired thousands of healthcare workers to maintain their dignity and safety while providing excellent patient care, creating cultural changes that strengthened the entire medical profession. Alexander's exposure and prosecution had demonstrated that wealth and influence could not protect individuals from consequences for criminal behavior, establishing precedents that influenced how powerful people were held accountable for their treatment of service workers and employees. The comprehensive reforms implemented in response to their case had created lasting protections for healthcare workers while improving the quality and safety of medical care for all patients, regardless of their wealth or social status. Most importantly, the story reinforced the essential truth that professional dignity and personal safety were fundamental rights that couldn't be compromised by economic pressure or power imbalances, and that individual courage could create positive change that benefited entire communities and future generations. Rebecca Martinez had proven that one person's commitment to professional integrity and personal dignity could challenge systemic abuse and create lasting change that protected countless others from similar exploitation and harm. The high-definition exposure of Alexander's behavior had created undeniable evidence that private misconduct by powerful individuals could no longer remain hidden, and that accountability was both possible and necessary for protecting vulnerable workers and maintaining professional standards. Their story continued to inspire healthcare workers, employment advocates, and policymakers who recognized that protecting professional dignity and personal safety required both individual courage and systemic change that addressed power imbalances and held all individuals accountable for their treatment of others. If this story touched you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments what part resonated most with you. Until next time.